Hi, my name is David P Shapiro. I'm the owner and managing partner of the law office of David P Shapiro, located in San Diego, California, where my firm helps good people regain control of their future when charged with a crime. In this video, I want to talk to you about the trial in Fort Worth, Texas, in federal court for Eric K. Eric K used to work with the Anaheim Angels or the Los Angeles Angels, however you want to refer to them as, and he is accused of distributing drugs and conspiring to distribute drugs that ultimately led to the death of Angels pitcher Tyler Skaggs. And this was in 2019 when the Angels were out in Texas in the suburbs of Dallas, I think at Fort Worth, ready to play the Texas Rangers, and Skaggs was found dead in his hotel room. And the cause of death was related to, basically asphyxiation on his own vomit for a combination of alcohol, oxycodone, and fentanyl. And a lot of times what we're seeing more and more, whether in San Diego or nationally from a federal perspective, are prosecutions of the distributors of the drugs that ultimately lead to these fatal overdoses or even non-fatal overdoses. And this case is really at the forefront of it. And what we've seen, what they're doing is they're tracing back. So what happens is you find someone obviously who overdoses, you identify that it was in fact an overdose. Okay, what was the drug that they overdosed on? Then where did they get that drug from? And in this instance, what we have is the prosecution, the federal government is saying, okay, this guy K, right, was distributing the drugs to people on the Angels throughout baseball, and they believe that he was the one who delivered, obviously, the fatal dose to Tyler Skaggs. But there's some interesting dynamics in this case, as there are a lot of times, is there's a lot of intervening causes here, right? Because Skaggs is found dead in a hotel room in Fort Worth, but K wasn't with the team, my understanding is, in Texas. So the issue is, when did he give him the drugs? And did Skaggs get the drugs from anybody else? And that's what we're seeing is the government, through their case, as we're into the middle of February, is sort of going on the defensive in the sense that they're sort of having to disprove all the other places that Skaggs could have gotten the drugs from. They're calling Matt Harvey, they're calling other players to talk about, to sort of rule out, right? Because the defense is going to say, hey, we don't know where he got the drugs from. This is a tragedy, but basically it would be more of a tragedy to convict one of his many possible distributors. This is really a case where the best argument is, no one's saying that this isn't terrible. No one's saying this isn't a tragedy. No one's saying the person shouldn't be punished. However, they have not proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt, excluding any and all reasonable interpretations of the evidence, that it could have been all these other people or anybody else, or if you're not really sure that it was in fact Eric K who distributed these drugs to Tyler Skaggs that ultimately led to his death. So really interesting case, a case that we see a lot of times here in San Diego, whether prosecuted in the state court or in federal court, where the penalties are significantly greater if you find yourself convicted of distribution of drugs that ultimately lead to the death of another. And what we also see, cell phone evidence. We see, emails. We see documentation about dealing drugs, about selling drugs, about distributing drugs. And that is damning evidence. It's not to say that Eric K will be convicted. I don't know if he will or if he won't. I think he has a pretty decent defense, and his attorney's doing an effective job through the prosecution's case in chief. But, the key pieces of evidence here tend to fall on electronic devices, computers, cell phones, the like. And we're also seeing a lot of immunity being given out by the federal government to someone like Matt Harvey, who obviously came in and testified about his own drug use, testified about giving Skaggs drugs in the past upon his request. So it's another a pretty interesting issue as it relates to immunity and, having someone testify. Otherwise, they'd, plead the fifth, right? So what happens with immunity is the government says, hey, as long as you tell the truth, we're not going to prosecute you, because they make a determination that, one, Harvey wasn't distributing the drugs to Skaggs that killed him, so they want K convicted. And they want K convicted more than they want to, worry about prosecuting someone like Matt Harvey. So another wrinkle in the Tyler Skaggs case involving his death. The defendant in the case is Eric K. So we're going to continue to monitor that. Check out our social media at DP Shapiro on Twitter is my personal handle. I'm going to be commenting from time to time, really tuning in on this case. As much info as we could get. Unfortunately, federal court doesn't televise these trials, which is unfortunate because I think it'll bring a lot of awareness to overdose, to fentanyl, to oxycodone, to prescription drug abuse, and street drug abuse, particularly with professional athletes who are doing whatever they can to, prolong their career. So, we're going to continue to do videos about this topic in general, but particularly as it relates to the Eric K. trial for the death of Tyler Skaggs. So, if you have any questions from a local perspective as it relates to San Diego, Southern California, related to distribution of fentanyl, distribution of drugs resulting in the death of another, if you think that you're under investigation, for a similar type situation that Eric K. is, you have to make sure you assert your rights. You have to make sure you keep your mouth closed. You have to make sure you don't talk on the phones. You have to make sure you're not texting about it. Reach out, contact a quality, locally experienced criminal defense law firm, whether mine or another, to make sure you're protecting yourself, protecting your freedom, protecting your future. Never going to be able to bring that person back if they're gone, but you can try and protect your future as best as possible. 619-295-3555. 619-295-3555. Again, David Shapiro, San Diego-based criminal defense lawyer and owner at the law office of David P Shapiro, where we help good people regain control of their future when charged with a crime.